why should Willa Cather be read? Why should everyone who listens to this go find a Willa Cather book or short story? Because she
Yeah, yeah. Give us the insight.
accessible
I have the
and
same
short
question.
stories. So
anyone
why
wants,
and which ones?
okay,
And in
I
addition to,
was
before you even
afraid
get
that
started,
Julia's
and
got something she
yes,
wants to
so
say.
sorry.
before you even get started, in addition to Carmen's question, I also wonder, what does it do to you? Like, so you're very good about telling the story. You and I are almost complementary, in that you're really focused on the past and I like ignore the past and move towards the future. So together we might be like a single person. But you're really good at weaving in like these things that you want to create. So then you create it, right? You want to create this bohemian culture, maybe even like a Parisian bohemian culture, and then you create it. But I'm curious what Willa Cather creates in you.
I think what she ignited in me was this, yes, I always told stories. I always would meet people and tell stories. And um, well, there were several things. One was the way she talked about people and the way she used her life. And also at the time when I first read her, I was nearing 30. I'd already given up one aspiration, which was, to be an actor. And I wanted something more. I didn't want to be, just a teacher. And I started writing plays.
Ah.
And so what I think, okay, what Willa Cather ignited in me was that it was okay to be ambitious.
Yeah.
And
I didn't know that. And my sister who's a CPA and, a whole other story. But I mean, I would hang out with these, people living on the land. And I would want to talk, I would want to say, well, what do you do? And they would look at me like I had three heads because it was not
Well,
cool.
that's not what it's about, man.
But I have always been interested in vocation, how people find their vocations and these stories. And Cather, I was very inspired by Cather because she, like me, I'd written in my school newspaper and all of that. And she did not start writing fictions, and certainly her first novel until she was 40.
I know why, from
I've
what
never
she
read.
said, I can tell you why people should read
Okay.
Willa Cather. It's because she was one of the first authors since Virginia Woolf to take women seriously, women's minds seriously.
But before
American.
Virginia Woolf,
No, she
before
was before
she's
Virginia.
She
before,
was before?
Although
Great. So she was.
tell you that she
they're
wrote
like contemporaries, actually.
well, her Cather's novel, Lucy Gayheart, which was written in 1935, it has a character named Mrs. Ramsey. And it's clearly about To the Lighthouse.
Yes.
And part of the real
What's the character? Is it Mrs. Dalloway? No.
Mrs. Dalloway is Mrs. Dalloway. To the Lighthouse, it's Mrs. Ramsey.
Oh, okay, got it.
So, but it's that thing of having a vision and being a woman and being taken seriously that I just loved about her. And she was always like right out there and unapologetic about it. And she created characters. She was interested in making art and what made people do it. And her characters, I can't, why should
Now,
people? Okay, so here's a story that I urge you to read, and it's called Coming Aphrodite. And it actually takes place in New York City. And by the way, Willa Cather lived in New York City from 1906 to 1947 when she died. So she really is a New York writer. And Coming Aphrodite is about a girl who comes to New York and she wants to be a singer, and she kind of interacts with this man who wants to be a painter. It's a very sexy story, very sexy.
It is. I know that story. Yes.
It gives you a feeling of New York in 1900 in the Village. That's where I would start. It's not so typical of her books, but it's just a.
You're right. It's more
wonderful.
like a novella, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
it-
a long short
yeah.
story. And the thing about Willa Cather, which I find so interesting, is that she never really writes about sex. So or really writes about, at least the books I've read. I've
No,
only
she
read like
doesn't.
4.
She writes very little about
Very little about
sexual-
it. And
Yeah,
and you know, like all the good sexy parts occur off stage.
yes.
You know,
That's
da da da
very
da
true.
da, and the next thing you know, they're married, and you're going, okay, how did that happen?
Well, she also writes about a lot of bad marriages, like
Yes.
in Song of the Lark, there's nothing but bad marriages. And definitely the woman, she really puts out there the choice to have a career and not, and want to avoid any kind of emotional involvement.
Yeah.
And that's a theme of hers.
There were enough other writers who were sort of romanticizing relationships and